to Salam Media. The time is 9:30, and you're still tuned in to News and Views with me, Salailo Makwidiri. And coming up next, we'll be speaking to Fazila Mohammed. She's an activist involved in Palestine Solidarity. And just briefly, we'll be chatting to her about that U.S. Blocking the Palestinian push for full UN membership at the Security Council. We saw that yesterday in the late hours of yesterday, we saw that there was an application from Palestine to become a full membership in the United States, in the United Nations Security Council, and that application was vetoed against by the US, and we're going to get reaction from Fazila Mohammed. Fazila, thank you so much for joining us onto Salam Media, and welcome.
Thank you very much, Silailo.
Salailo, yes.
Silailo, thank you very much for having me on the
okay.
station.
Pleasure is all ours. Fazila, I just wanted to just get your reaction quickly on that. US again, flexing their muscle and blocking Palestinians' push for full UN membership at the Security Council. What can we make of that?
Well, I think firstly we need to understand what does it mean for Palestinians. What does Palestinian statehood mean? And Palestinian statehood means that we talk about the end of the occupation of Palestine by the Israelis, because once Palestine is a state, the occupation of Israel in Palestine must end. I think the UN recognizes the 1967 borders, which means that a greater part of Palestine will be autonomous. And I think the Israelis don't want that, because they want to continue, as we see in the news every day, they want to continue with the theft of Palestinian land, etc. So the US is complicit in this breach of international law. We see every day additional settlements, which is completely against international law. So what we have here is the United States, on the one hand, calling for the two-state solution, and on the other, blocking Palestinian statehood. It's contradictory. And actually, it just shows that, in a way, it supports and it enables Israeli crimes, against the Palestinian people. That's what it does signify. But I think it's really important to look at the question of occupation, and when I think it's a fundamental demand that we must make, and support for the people of Palestine, is really the end of the occupation and a viable Palestinian state. And they don't want that. They don't want that. They want this. There's a lot of rules related to who controls what area, and the Israelis controlling Palestinian land, etc. All of that will end if they have formal statehood and they recognize as a state by the United Nations. So I think it's really important to understand that this is really a way in which the Americans block the Palestinians, right to self-determination.
Mm.
It also makes it is quite clear that the Americans are not interested in the Palestinian people. They're only interested in Israel and all its its needs and its wants. And so we know that going forward, if inshallah there's an end to the war, there's a need to find some kind of solution. We know that the Americans are not honest brokers. They're there to serve the interests of Israel. And so, it really clearly shows us time and time again. I don't know if the Americans think that the rest of the world are kind of ignorant, because they continue in this way to undermine the Palestinian aspirations, but at the same time pretend that they are honest broker in the process, in mediating matters between Palestine and Israel.
I think it was earlier in the year. I think in the late parts of March, when there was that UN Security Council ceasefire vote, and we saw America abstaining. Do you think maybe this decision by Palestine was maybe in some way influenced by that? They thought maybe America is seeing a bit of light, because I don't think they've ever abstained when it comes to a ceasefire vote, when it comes to Gaza, ever before. And I think all of us were really excited when we saw that abstinence, because it sent, a strong message, a silent one, but a very, very strong message. But looking into this one, they completely turned the wheel. What do you think influenced that?
Well, I think that the abstention at the UN for the ceasefire was really a result of the pressure that America faced around the world. Millions of people marched calling for for a ceasefire and an end to the war. And um, the thing is that the Americans knew that they would have no basis, legitimate basis to even speak on the Palestinian Israeli question if they allowed the continued killing and starvation of the people in Gaza. They knew that. So it's a bit of a public relations stunt. But you're right, it does mark a first departure from their usual kind of knee jerk reaction to just support Israel. So they too were sending a message to the Israelis that we can't support you in every circumstance, even when I think with Biden, his re-election chances are undermined by the continued war in Gaza. So I think he was acting somewhat in uh, for selfish reasons. But let's just say that, and beneath all of that, Israel, and I think the American administration has said it time and time again, we are implacable allies of the Israelis. So they have no interest in the lives of Palestinian people. We know that.
Mm, mm. You mentioned that abstinence from that ceasefire vote was largely influenced by activism that was throughout worldwide. Even here in South Africa, we saw these big marches and protests to different consulates and embassies, and American offices, and these boycotting calls on social media and everywhere. Is it the same route that you think people all across, and specifically in South Africa, should continue to take? Because sometimes it feels like there's a bit of activism fatigue, especially when sometimes we hear of such losses in the UN Security Council, where people feel a bit despondent, they feel tired, they feel like there's no much difference they can do when it comes to Palestinian solidarity. It is activism, and going to the streets and going to these embassies and protesting, does it make a difference, and is it still the route to go for South Africans and pro-Palestine activists the worldwide?
Yeah, the thing is, what weapon do we have? We have the weapon of the power of the people. And the power of the people is activism, you know, that without ongoing pressure, you can never change the world. We know in South Africa, through the activism, throughout the 80s, etc., the South African apartheid regime was forced to end, and they gained huge amount of support internationally. And I think with the Palestinian cause, I think post, this war in Gaza, I think the world attitude to Palestine, particularly in the West, will change at the level of the people. The governments are almost always very slow and far behind. So I think that activism must continue. South Africa has recognized Palestine as a state, but I think that the activism must continue nevertheless, because if you go back and you read the Treaty of Lausanne, uh, you'll see that this creation of the state of Israel, the language there, if you read it, of course, it was written 100 years ago, but the language and the basis for the state of Israel was based on racism. Some
Mm,
of the Treaty of Lausanne says we need a civilized people to actually uh, rule in an area full of uncivilized people. So it's like blatant racism. So the basis of the Israeli state is, of course, secular colonialism and racism. But also, what it shows is that mindset of like trying to find the so-called white civilizing force in the Middle East still remains at the heart of what all these Western countries are doing. And I think it's important for us in the global south to make sure that we we make that uncomfortable, and we make it impossible for them to continue in that same way.
mm. I think we're going to leave it there, Fazila. Really, really appreciate your insights and urging people there to go out to the streets and protest, because, as you mentioned, that's the only weapon that we have. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to leave it here for now. Jazakallah so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jazakallah.
Fazila Mohammed there. We're chatting a bit about the US are blocking the Palestinian push for full UN membership at the Security Council. They know what would that mean. They know if the UN gives Palestine a full UN membership at the Security Council, it almost means the end of the occupation from Israel. So we're going to take a quick break. A really insightful interview there from Fazila. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I will be speaking about the sixth Commonwealth Red Cross and Red Crescent Conference, highlighting the international humanitarian law with Rogers Balo, International Community of the Red Cross. More after this here on Salam Media with me, Salai.